Hey everyone, welcome to Insights IAS initiative. So today will be our last episode for 2024. I hope all of you have had a fruitful year this time. And as we approach 2025, new year comes with new hopes, resolution and promises. Let us work together to make your journey towards UPSC a very fruitful one. So with this, let us begin the first topic of our discussion. It is with respect to uh, balance in regulating social media for children. So as you all have read already, that Australia became the first country in the world to ban social media for teenagers. So there were many editorials and articles that had been coming from quite long, and we had not picked up this for discussion. There was a very effective article in New Indian Express yesterday, or probably on Saturday. So this was very fruitful because it included one of the viewpoints of a social psychologist called Jonathan Haidt from USA. So let us use this discussion especially for our essays, and also when you're talking about governance as an issue, as in how to regulate this kind of social media exposure for children. So to begin with, this news about Australia banning social media for children, it kind of fueled global debate about psychological impact of online platforms, especially on the well-being of the children. So though this decision has been welcomed world over, the idea, or especially the concept of shielding children from harmful effects by reducing their exposure to cyberbullying, unrealistic standards and harmful content, this issue definitely calls for a lot of analysis, because as we understand, this is an age of digital devices. So outrightly banning kids from usage at a formative age of their life, will it be fruitful enough? Will it be positive, having a positive impact, or is it going to make the effectiveness of ban function in itself? So let us first start with India's statistics, which could be handy for you in beginning your answers, or even to use them as your content in the uh, questions on digital media. So it is told that 30%, this is based on National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, 30% of children who are aged between 8 to 18 years, they own smartphones as of 2021. So the next idea is 62% have access to internet via parents' phone. So this is a huge number in itself. Then we can talk about 43% of children having active social media accounts already. So this is a huge number, almost nearing 50% of the population. So with this statistic, you can tell about why regulating this usage or presence of children online is very much important, even in the Indian context. So coming to the idea of the psychologist here, I'll write the name, it would be relevant for you. Jonathan Haidt. So he's an American social psychologist. So in his words, there's a strong correlation between increased screen time and the rise of anxiety, depression, and self-harm, especially among adolescents. And that is the reason he calls the generation to be an anxious generation. So to be specific, what are the negative impacts? You would have come across many of them, but these three terms are from a social psychologist, making them very impactful in your answers. So the first one is heightened social comparison. So this is a phrase which we can use to tell how children or adolescents compare their own lifestyles with the other peer group present online. So creating an impression of idealistic persona, that is, this is how we need to be when we grow up, or a kind of imagination boost, as in what exactly a person needs to look like, whereas we know the content goes on social media is only the happy side and the sad viewpoint of a person's life is usually ignored or not put up on a public platform. So as a result, it leads to self-esteem issues. So this would be a negative impact on the children altogether, is the psychologist's viewpoint here. So the next question is ban effective? That is, when we have taken the measures, can we go ahead very successfully in this? So the effectiveness, basically, it depends on enforcement mechanism. So will this enforcement mechanism be suitably devised to make the ban effective, is the first question we can raise. The second issue is about implementing a strong age verification system. So the strong age verification system, it infringes privacy. So too many important details asked by the government, people would talk about privacy concerns there. So the third one is, it undermines the children's digital rights. So even according to United Nations Commission for Protection of Child Rights, children have certain basic rights, and even when they're adolescents, they should be given the agency to take calls on important things like digital rights. But when we ban social media, it would impact this agency of the children according to United Nations Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So remember this point of agency of children being impacted. The fourth one, it comes with the risks of excluding children from digital literacy as well. So we were the ones who provide the kids with phones, especially during the COVID, for online classes. Now when we don't teach them to use phone responsibly, we are harming their self-expression. At the same time, we are trying to dissuade social connections that are formed, so which is very important for the progression of a society. And the third one is can talk about many important educational resources that a kid gets access to will be devoid of when we are banning social media for the adolescents. So now comes to the suggestion given by the author here, called whole child approach. You can use this terminology as it is. What is the meaning of this? It is nothing but balancing regulated digital media engagement with both offline and physical activities. So both of them are equally relevant in the present generation when digital devices are ruling our lives. And basically, it could be done by equipping children with critical thinking, especially to navigate the online spaces. So for that matter, the author gives you suggestions here along with the examples that have already practiced in the world. So the first suggestion is by an example of France. So in France, there is a ban on mobiles in the schools. Mobiles in the schools are prohibited. As a result, they are already seeing that there is improved attention of the students on the curriculum. This is an observed thing. Their focus towards the studies has increased. It has led to an increase in physical activities in the children, which is one of the negative impact of devices, absence of physical activities. And as a result, there is a lot of interpersonal interactions that is going on. So children, instead of preferring for digital or let's say virtual meetups, interpersonal interactions have increased. So this small initiative has led to many behavioral transformation in the children, is a point worth noting. The second one is from Finland. So Finland, it is talking about digital citizenship curriculum. So it is putting digital citizenship in the curriculum itself, so that it's equipping children with the skills to navigate the online places very safely. So you can teach them how to detect between a fake news, how to detect basically how to learn to behave responsibly online, how not to compare oneself with the others. So this part is very well covered in Finland. And the next suggestion is the major stakeholder here called parents. So in the above two, we have seen about one important stakeholders called the education system or the school. So the second stakeholder majorly here come the parents. So parents need to engage in open discussions with the children. So these open discussions will be nothing but setting boundaries for them when they are using the social media. At the same time, managing the digital identities thoughtfully could be something that the parents can teach. So these identities are, let's say, advising the kid to not to be active with respect to putting personal profiles on the social platform, or telling about what your exact identity is before you try to cheat, or let's say try to just portray a fake image on the social media platform. So these identity formation on social media could be a good and thoughtful guidance that the parents can give. The fourth point here is about technological companies. These are other major stakeholders. Technological companies, what they can do is create safe mode options for participation of younger users on social media. So this safe mode has already been quite active in some countries like European Union. So why not we replicate it other areas also? Now comes the role of policy makers. So what will policy makers be doing? They can explore multiple options, like let's say limited access to social media. This could be a policy itself. Then we can give a time window, that is, this is the only time in which teens will be allowed to access the social media or any kind of digital devices. Then we can also talk about content moderation efforts by the government, where what are the content that go into the social platform for a particular age needs to be moderated and regulated by the policy makers. At the same time, we can make certain policies regarding age appropriate features of all these apps. So this would really be a better opportunity to balance between online and the offline activities of the children. So in conclusion, the author talks about a nuanced and collaborative solution. If you see, all the above stakeholders have their own way or have their own role in the how to decide the digital personality of the individual. So this collaborative solutions, it looks like it is too time consuming, it is too lengthy, and at times looks impractical. But if you see, many of the successful efforts of the government have been in a collaborative manner, and without making people an active participant in this, it would just be a half-hearted effort. So it may be time consuming, very rigorous, and appear very idealistic, but it is really better than banning, and banning might actually not resolve the whole issue. So we should always choose something that is healthier, a kind of healthier relationship between children and the digital devices. This could be our concluding part here. So with this, we'll move to our next topic. The second article is about a new department announced by Donald Trump once he takes up the presidency, called Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk. So now there have been many discussions after this announcement that in every country probably whether to imply this, whether to create an organization like this in our own country or not. So even in India, we have seen many discussions as in, do we need a company or do we need a department in the same line, or what should be the solution for many lack of governance issues in the country. So it is considered to be an empowered advisory body to the president of USA. There is a lot of discussion on a similar body in India as well. So what are the parameters of efficiency that this department DOGE is talking about? The first one is right sizing, that is having sufficient number of people in the organization to work for. Then the second one is to have a government that is responsive. The third one is streamlining structures. and regulating many important processes that are going on. And the last one, representing the political philosophy of the government. So, this is what the story of DOGE is. But if you see any kind of template that the world practices or different parts of the world have in place, these models or templates or ideas can't be transplanted as it is, which we have seen because Indian society or Indian governance and economy comes with multiple diversities and challenges that are unique to herself. Hence, let's see what quickly primary focus of DOGE is. So the primary idea here is to reduce the size. Reduce, we just spoke here about right sizing. So in USA they're planning about reducing the size of the federal government. So where to reduce, whom to remove? When that question comes, the choice is that they're usually slicing off the jobs created by executive order. So executive order has a short term life or can be changed with the changes of the government altogether. So this executive government, whatever the appointments were made from the Joe Biden's administrations, those appointed executive posts are going to be removed in the idea of reducing the size of federal government. So especially we can talk about removing the posts created by Democrats. This is one of the major focuses teamed up with the other ideas. So when we compare what India exactly needs for improving its governance, there were some very good points mentioned in the Deccan Herald newspaper in the editorial here. We'll quickly look into one by one, which would be relevant for you in GS paper 2 governance as well as paper 4 ethics. So first one is about in the core governance circle, if we talk about in India, we already have a few positions that have been created. That is, when we talk about important entities impacting governance as a very important parameter, we have very few positions which have been created or filled by political discretion. So yes, we can talk about some institutions and commissions where political parties do interfere or do decide many of the heads of them, but it is, we cannot tell that it is the norm that is in India. So in a generic sense, political positions or important bureaucratic positions getting directly appointed by executives is not a reality in India. So what DOGE is doing to politically remove the post created by the previous government may directly not be relevant in the Indian context in many ways. So the second point here we can talk about is Government of India currently needs more employees. We can see that many of the important activities of the government is stalled due to lack of manpower. Especially we need many technocrats. At the same time, we need many generalist workers also who can oversee the administration in a very well way. So when US is talking about downsizing, that option doesn't exist for India because there is a need of more or people in the organization called government. So the third one is about the question of hiring outsiders. Let's say the organization, if you see many a times Donald Trump's idea of hiring people from outside or outsourcing people instead of regularizing employment. When this comes, we can take an example. Let's say India is trying to hire some outsiders to implement its semiconductor policy. So government has given a huge amount of money for making India a semiconductor hub of the world. So when we create some positions for recruiting from outside, what would happen is the idea here. That is, if we go for some best qualified candidates, or there is like they're the best in the world, such candidates might not believe in the government policy or ambitious idea that by so and so year we are going to make India a semiconductor hub. So best qualified people many times do not support the ambitions of the government. At the same time, even if a person is appropriately talented or good in their work, Such people, if their idea is aligned with what the government wants to achieve in a limited period, this is more successful and has been worked well for Indian government, rather than hiring outsiders who do not share the ideas of the government in major ways. So this could be the second implementation or third implementation of why DOJ like structure might not be applicable to India as it is. We can, but it with some modifications done according to the local needs. So the fourth one here is there is a requirement of process reforms here, that is recruiting or removing, or let's say rewriting or removing laws and minor regulations. So many of the times, even in India, we have seen that we have rewritten laws. Recently there was an effort to rewrite the criminal laws, and some provisions have been removed which are outdated. So that was to make sure we are governing the nation better by keeping up to date with the needs of the time. So it is about ascertaining which rules and laws are actual hurdle and which are simple around and they're no longer deployed. So this balance needs to be done. But if you see mere removing of laws, it doesn't automatically deliver economic outcomes. So we usually talk about some outdated law that needs to be removed, but in the ground, how it is getting impacted has not been worked on much. So the author tells that process reforms by rewriting and removing acts or elements of the act in the long run may be effective only when we look that they are actually acting in the ground level. So the fifth one is about there are many vestigial organizations, that is agencies, commissions that serve very little purpose in the governance structure. So many of the time we see organizations which are very dormant, not actively participating in discourses, and not kind of passive in taking up initiatives. So such kind of activities still receive a huge amount of budgetary allocation, and it is this we can call they had outlived their utility probably. Hence, it is these kind of organization in India that need to be rationalized rather than working on exactly the same model of DOGE. This above could definitely help us to bring a reform in our governance structure. So rather than a one-time DOGE approach, we can say a regular, a systemic audit of government and quasi government bodies to measure return on investment is a better way out, rather than creating one organization and outsourcing the process of the governmental efficiency. The next topic is a very interesting one related to Indian bureaucracy. So, this article is talking about Indian bureaucrats aren't superhuman, relieve them of stress. So, basically, till now, we have heard a lot of stories and a lot of real life incidents about how bureaucrats have made a lot of difference in the life of people by working so much. We can talk about the commitment and dedication they have. At the same time, on the flip side of the coin, we have the stories we haven't heard of is the kind of work or the kind of work lifestyle that the bureaucrats are having, which puts a lot of burnout on them. So if you would have heard, there was a recent debate of 17-hour work culture in the private sector. So when this news or when this tweet was told by one of the tech giants, many people, especially on the social media, responded in a very bitter manner, telling that this is very unreasonable, this is very difficult to achieve, it puts a stress on the person, it impacts the work life balance. But if you see, by default, the bureaucrats who are working or acting as a steel frame in India, they have been doing this kind of activity even without formally having to work for 17 hours. But their responsibilities and the nature of their exposure to the general public, they have been giving this kind of commitment to their work to from quite long time, and hardly we have any discussion about the stress and the physical fatigue that these people experience. So this article is also about this lifestyle that the Indian bureaucrats are facing. So if we can rightly call it to be a paradox of power that is given to them, at the same time they are vulnerable as well. So it's a paradox of power and vulnerability. So the bureaucrats are basically responsible for a nation's progress. They also bear the brunt of frustration at the same time, and they are expected to deliver superhuman results under relentless scrutiny. They're always judged and scrutinized whether they are performing better or not. So overall, if you check what are the challenges faced by bureaucrats, we can list them, which could be very relevant for you in GS paper 4 case studies as well. At the same time, GS paper 2 civil services and the role of civil services is a topic. So in that we can expect a question. So, first one is physical and psychological stress that the people experience who are working under bureaucracy. And the second one is long hours of work is a second negative. Long hours of work is a challenge they are facing. The third one is multitasking. So there are multiple laws and regulations made which keep a district collector as a nodal agency for many practical issues in the district, and an SP to be the nodal agency for many important work. The same is the case of IRS and all the other cadres. The roles are different, but multitasking is a reality. So the fourth one is about constant inquiry and calls from multiple stakeholders. This easily can be considered to be a bane of technology, where the number is accessible to the public. Then we can also talk about urgent demands that keep coming, especially from the political spectrum. As you know, conduct rules tells that the political stakeholders need to be adhered to by the bureaucrats. And we can also talk about adapting constantly to shifting expectations. So many a times a bureaucrat is expected to juggle between multiple expectations, and they need to manage all of them in a limited time. So as a result of it, the bureaucrats are entangled in a web of emotions, we can call. These web of emotions include fear, they include anxiety. We can talk about burnout experienced by many of them, bringing down the efficiency at the end of the day. So the author in this article puts a very interesting short form VUCA, which stands for why in the current time everything is complicated is because of the volatility. V stands for volatility here. U stands for the uncertainties that are coming up in the daily lives of bureaucrats. C stands for the complexity with which the challenges are ridden with. Fourth one is lack of clarity or ambiguity that exists. So, because of these four reasons, the lifestyle of bureaucrats has been very challenging. So, how is the question here, or how have things been difficult for them? If you see, or why, if you put a question, the idea is there is lack of training and skill development of civil servants. Let's say once in a lifetime the skills will be given which are static and at times outdated, because the training and the implementation has a lot of gap in between them. This most important part is lack of relevant training and skill development, which pushes the, or probably this whole training might not always include the idea of stress management and managing time and all of them. The second one is reluctance of the employees or bureaucrats for relearning. So many times there were suggestions of in-service course, hence all of them were discouraged as people felt that it's not required for them. So reluctance for relearning, unlearning is something that stops bureaucrats from being efficient in especially in a fast changing world. So when things are rapidly changing, being updated is extremely relevant. So because of which they are overworked and under prepared. So this is a good phrase: overworked yet under prepared for the work, right? So this is one of the important parameters. Third one, For bureaucrats, there are more sticks now in the language of the management, but very less carrots. So we can talk about more punishments for kind of, violating the rules and not updating the time to time activities, but there are hardly any incentives available, an attractive incentive for committing work on time or pursuing innovative ideas as well. So because of lack of innovation, or let's say lack of incentive, many of the bureaucrats are not encouraged to carry forward the innovation. The fourth one is about self preservation above creativity. So why this idea comes? Creativity is taking a toll because if the experimentation, or when a bureaucrat want to experiment with something, it's not always successful, as we know. And if it is a failure, there are more punishments given, or let's say a kind of sticks are used. Hence, instead of going and taking a risk of experimentation, self preservation mode is activated for many of our bureaucrats, because of which innovation has taken a backseat. The fifth one majorly is about stress. So, the intensity and consequences have resulted in alarming levels of stress, because of which there is diminishing productivity in the bureaucrats already. So, these are the some new reasons that we can remember due to the productivity of bureaucrats, or why they are overburdened, right? So what are the meaningful reforms we can suggest for it? So usually the whole burden of national growth and national service is rested on the bureaucrat, which is, the author, according to the author, a negative idea. We cannot burden the entire bureaucrats only for the development of the nations. It is the citizens also who need to be an important stakeholder. The political parties also needs to take power, and the executive, that is the temporary, or we can say non-permanent executive, also has a major role. Just burdening the bureaucrats with the nation building work is a biased way of looking into things. This is the first, or introduction for the meaningful reforms. So the introduction goes with the idea of health first idea. That is, the bureaucrats need to be encouraged to prioritize physical, emotional, and mental health. This can be done by regular health checkups organized by the entity or the government itself. We can talk about workplace wellness module. For example, if you see, there are many police stations in the country which do nothing but celebrate the birthday of the members in the whole station. So this makes the people feel that, this organization is ours, it's celebrating me, so I can work very positively for it. So it gives a very good mental health and also a happy hormone to work positively for the rest of the year. So this workplace wellness modules need to be developed even for our bureaucrats who are time strapped in their daily life. So the second one is about time for reflection. We need to give time to our bureaucrats for reflection, because some personal time is needed for them for self introspection and freely think where their life is moving towards. And as of now, this space is hardly available to our bureaucrats. And if you take in the words of Gandhiji here, there is more to life than increasing its speed. You can quote this as well. There is more to life than increasing its speed. So this goes very well with our bureaucrats as well. So many a times we see that there is many times people are heard telling these days that the illiteracy in the modern era is about many new things. That is, we are now having a process called unlearning and relearning. So this has to be institutionalized, telling that frequent update in the knowledge of the bureaucrats by creating workshops on technology and leadership skill needs to be institutionalized. So there is an American writer who can be aptly quoted here. I will dictate, you can take it down, called Alvin Toffler. Okay, he says that, he's an American writer. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So this goes a great extent at a time when we see about AI replacing jobs, or even when bureaucrats who are not tech savvy or not adapted to modern ideas need to go through the process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So the fourth suggestion given is about fixing incentives. So incentives play a major role in the encouraging or active participation of bureaucrats. So tangible rewards for innovation and exceptional performance, let's say allowance for some amount of experimentation, needs to be encouraged in the bureaucrats so that they become more productive and work becomes a happy place for them rather than an area where they're getting burnt out. Right? So in the conclusion, the author tells that it is the time to make the system more humane, ensuring that those who serve the nation do so with fulfillment and purpose. This article that we'll see now is about the growing concern over men's loneliness. So maybe this topic is relevant to the idea of mental health altogether. That would be relevant in non-communicable diseases or a new health challenge that government is facing. At the same time, as we are seeing it from the perspective of men, this would be very important for GS paper 1 Indian society as well. So when it comes about salient features of Indian society, we usually refer to gender component and the women whose ideas are more discussed in videos and even expected as questions in UPSC. But the component of men here also is important because the society sets certain expectations and roles for men to play. When they are not able to fulfill that, they also experience loneliness, which leads to a lot of mental health challenges which are not discussed regularly in the normal times. So, talking about this idea called loneliness, it is a significant issue world over, uh, affecting individuals across countries and cultures, we can say. So the idea is that men often experience more loneliness more profoundly than women. So especially after COVID pandemic, this loneliness issue in men has intensified because lockdowns had disrupted social connections to a great extent, and even after the ease of restrictions, re-establishing social connections have been challenging for many people out there. Hence, this idea of loneliness of men is a very important factor to be discussed. So if we talk about why are men more affected, the first one is directly a point for a GS paper 1 Indian society. That is, it is because of cultural expectations. So, what is the meaning of this now? So, there are societal norms which play a major role in influencing men's experiences with loneliness. So, if you have heard, there is a very important term called masculinity. So, what comes with the idea of masculinity? It is being independent, it is being self reliance, it is about emotional strength or emotional stoicism, and this discourages vulnerability. So men cannot be vulnerable. You would have heard men can't cry. All these are what society has been teaching the boys since they're young. So creating a huge expectations out of them. So this is a reason why when men cannot meet any of them due to multiple factors in region, which is very subjective, the loneliness is too high and they experience it quite often. The second reason is about social isolation. So we often talk that social isolation is a feeling experienced by women, but no, men also experience social isolation because there are many transitions in life that are coming up frequently. Let's say changing job from one place to another, moving to new city in with the opportunity of a new job, retiring from the work altogether. So all of them, it is not easy to establish new connections in all these changes. So especially there are other demands of work, career, and all of this burden leaves little scope for social interactions. This further leads to furtherance of emotional loneliness. So we can talk about the third factor here itself, called life transitions and mental health. So why life transitions matter here? This transition is mainly about career, we must say. Other life transitions relate to marriage, divorce, at times loss of loved ones. All this can disrupt social network of men and create stress, thus amplifying the idea of loneliness. And the fourth one is economic and digital factors. So, what are these economic and digital factors? If you see, urbanization has been very successful in creating a dense population, but it has created individualistic environment where community ties are very weak. So, at times you would have heard people tell that in urban areas we do not know who our neighbors are as well. So, it is a very isolated area despite having a lot of people around us. At the same time, we have the challenge of digital factors where online communication has taken over face to face communication or physical meeting that people used to do, because of which the idea or the loneliness factor has increased even without one's own realization. So, what is the negative impact of this loneliness? So, the first one is about the negative impact of it on mental health of a person. It would lead to anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, and in the long run, resulting in dementia as well. Even when the age of a person progresses. The second is impact is physical outcome, where issues like cardiovascular diseases would be relevant, would be hiked. Obesity also would be a byproduct of such loneliness. The third one is behavioral consequences. So how a person behave when they are lonely, they would at times go to drug abuse or substance abuse. They would rely on unhealthy eating practices when the loneliness is high. At the same time, they would practice social withdrawal. That is, they would completely step aside from the social interactions, feeling that I am happy when I am alone, or trying to enjoy one's own company, which is nothing but loneliness. Okay, so then as a result of which, there is increased mortality. So, loneliness being an independent or a issue in itself to be discussed, it has a lot to do with the mental health and how stereotyped the society is when we talk about the mental health of men, because we always judge them based on the values, or let's say based on the role the society has assigned for them. So, what could be the solution for this? The solution for this can be broadly divided into two categories. One is individual efforts, the other one is societal efforts altogether. So when it comes to societal efforts, we talk about breaking stereotypes that are associated with the man's life by challenging harmful social expectations. So this is very much needed, and the role of parenting and schooling comes as a major factor here. When it comes to individual ideas or individual solutions, we can talk about encouraging people to engage in community activities rather than spending lonely time indoors, reconnecting with older friends, utilizing the various platforms available. We can talk about giving back to society as a concept where people will feel that the society is mine and we can work closely for the development of areas around us. At the same time, a person should know how to prioritize self care. not to be consumed too much for the societal expectations, but to prioritize one's own care routine. So, if this idea is normalized in the society, we would have lesser cases of loneliness, anxiety, depression, and the rest negative impacts of it. And we can talk about a better place and a right development that is going on physically and mentally for our citizens. So, the last article for discussion today is a very thought provoking article, we must say. And more than an article, it is a story or it is an incident that has taken place very close to India's neighborhood. And we all have one or the other message to carry with us at the end of this discussion. So, we remember that in the year 2021, the Taliban rule researched in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of United States military from there, and Afghanistan is not the same land anymore. So, in the background of this concept, there was various news articles that were coming. The recent one was in The Economist, related to the incredible story of Afghanistan's exiled women's cricket team. And Escape from Kabul was an Indian Express article published a few days ago. So, this is a combination of both of them, which will give us a very good idea and a good feeling about how, despite uncertainties, fighting for a cause really gives a person the kind of satisfaction and determination they have always been looking for. So, this is the story of Benafsha Hashmi. She has played an instrumental role in keeping up the spirit of playing cricket alive in the Afghanistan women cricket team. And without a doubt, this is a remarkable story of hope, willpower, selflessness, and stubbornness. So, as we know, Afghanistan is has a traditional sport. It's a version of polo on which people sit on horses and try to push the carcass of a goat towards the goal. This has been the national sport of Afghanistan from quite long. But when, due to the civil war that was going on in Afghanistan during the Cold War era, many of the Afghanistan people, they were settled in refugee camps in Pakistan. So in Pakistan, as we know, Pakistan and India, both of them have been associated with UK when they were introduced to cricket. So in the refugee camps, the Pakistani children and people were watching Pakistani children play cricket. So when they tried their hands at playing cricket, they understood that it's a very interesting game and slowly got used to the idea of cricket, learned the nuances of it. And once the civil war was ended and democracy was established in Afghanistan, they migrated to their country back only to introduce to the idea of cricket and create a team of their own. And it is very evident as a fact that in India's efforts to help Afghanistan to rebuild itself under a democratic nation, in addition to helping them construct the parliament building and sponsoring the Salma Dam project, India has also contributed in training the Afghan cricket team. But this was the male cricket team. So there has been a lot of efforts in Afghanistan by the women also to start their own cricket team. So there were many efforts put by them, and finally in the beginning, or probably in the first few months of 2021, 25 women were selected to represent Afghanistan in their cricket team, and they were being trained by the government. So there was a lot of optimism and hope in the women that they also can represent their country. They can play the sport in a area that where girls' education and the other topics are quite frowned upon. So this had brought a lot of hopes and optimism, only to realize that on the August 15th of that year, Taliban takes over control of the country, and we know that Taliban has been quite sexist in its ideology, has a lot of restrictions going on for women, telling that many of the professions they follow are closed down now. They are not allowed to. The schools and colleges for women are are closed down. Journalists and other Afghani origin women are not encouraged to come out of their homes without a male companion, and the dress dressing of women are also quite strictly regulated. So, is it really possible for the women cricket team to perform or even think of playing under the circumstances? The answer is a big no. So, this captain here called Bainaf Shah Hashmi, she started taking measures so that they secretly escape out of Afghanistan so that they can always pursue their passion of playing cricket. So, she constantly writes emails in her broken English, in her own words, to United States, Britain. She also writes to Australia. So all of these countries have been supporters of cricket, and she wanted them to host her and her family to safety. But within a few days, within a few hours, we must say, these countries responded that, okay, sure, you can come along with your family and resettle in our country. We will provide you visa and all the required facilities in record low time. But as a determined captain, she was very sure that she did not want to go all alone. She wanted to take her whole team with her, not only her team, but the team's families as well. So imagine 25 girls and her families had to be accommodated in any of these countries. So she outrightly rejected the offers of Britain and other countries, telling that I am not ready to come alone with my family. I want you to accommodate all the cricket team of Afghanistan completely. So she was very stubborn in this, and Australian cricket team had Australia was the first country to respond and tell that you and your family come off as of now. We can slowly bring the rest. But the captain here was so adamant that she never agreed to that till she completely talked to them, finally made an arrangement to host the whole 25 cricket members and their families in Australia today. But from here, they all have migrated to different countries, that this whole team today lies scattered between Australia, Britain, US and other countries. But despite this fact, the efforts of Bainaf Shah Hashmi has been very important, because the way they escaped from Afghanistan is a story in itself. If they were visibly seen to be going out anywhere, it would be considered to be a very risky affair. If they got to know that it is a case of a cricket team escaping out, they would have shot dead all of them. So they tried to hide the information, get a health visa of Pakistan on health grounds, which was available in the initial days of Taliban's takeover. They slowly came to Pakistan and then from there flew to Australia. This entire story, when you read it in your own words, it was very risky affair. So easily the leader here could have chosen to make herself and her family safe, but she did not choose that. So if you see the qualities of a good leader, a remarkable story of hope, we can say willpower, selflessness and stubbornness can rightly be seen in Bainaf Shah Hashmi's story. So if you see what she had told to one of the interviewers, even today when I speak to youngsters, I tell them my life motto is listen to all, but don't follow anyone. Only follow your heart. Courage will come automatically. So you can quote this very aptly in our GS paper 4 answer, where day in and day out the bureaucrats have to choose between heart and, let's say, some kind of external pressure. So where this topic would be relevant, this was a previous year essay, and just imagine writing this story to start this essay with. So patriarchy and social inequality, when they give it in this way, we need not always start with an Indian example. Patriarchy is a universal feature, we can rightly say, and the story of Afghanistan's sexist regime is definitely a very good introduction of how the women have tried to sneak out of this patriarchy and able to establish a life for themselves. So what is the question here? Patriarchy is the least noticed yet the most significant structure of social inequality. So playing cricket for these girls was not just a game. It was an act of telling that why should we listen to a regime that enforces patriarchy on aspiring young minds. So it was questioning the whole patriarchy in many of the words told by Bainaf Shah herself. So not only this essay topic, this story would also be relevant in a people that value its privileges above its principles principles loses both. So the meaning is, whenever here in case of Benafsha, she was privileged enough to move out with her family into safe havens of Australia without getting noticed by Taliban and without taking any risk of sneaking out the entire 25 team. But she was principled enough to make sure it's her responsibility to help her team come out. So this is the magic of any sport which instills a team spirit in the individual. So a people that values its privileges above its principle loses both of them. So the story of Benafsha here was a counter to this whole essay that we were talking about. So if by starting with the story and telling that if she had given up the principles and preferred privileges, she would have lost both of them. But today she is well respected by her entire team and celebrated across the cricket fraternity in the world. So this example gives us the importance of sports in our life as well, because it comes with many positive ethical values. So with this, I hope you all have had a very good year of 2024. Wishing you new year well in advance. Let's meet on 1st of Jan. Thank you so much. Stay with us for more such value addition for your answer writing. Thank you.